Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you as always for being here. I have some great patriotic DIYs for you today, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, this has been in my stash for a while. It is from the Dollar Tree. It is like a little windmill, and I think it used to have like a welcome sign or something on the bottom, on the base of it that I'd ripped off for another project. But at any rate, I got it ready with my parchment paper underneath for painting. This is Ocean, my Crimson, and my Adirondack white chalk paint. The first thing I'm going to do is paint two of these blades. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but that's what I'm going to call it, with the Ocean. And then I'm going to do two with the red, but I'm going to alternate the red ones, leaving one in between each. And then those last two, I'm going to paint them white. And I did multiple coats of paint for a couple of the colors at least, because they were a little bit more transparent. My blue was the most opaque, so it needed the least amount of paint, but the red was surprisingly translucent. So I did as many coats as was necessary to make sure it was trimmed up, or not trimmed up, but covered. And then I was just showing you this teeny little paintbrush that I was going to use to attempt to paint stars on my blue blades. I was wishing I had a white paint marker, but my white paint markers that I had are out of paint, so that wasn't an option. Then I was also wishing I had like a stencil, which I think I did have because I end up using it later, and it probably would have worked for this, but I'd forgotten at this point that I had it, or stickers or something. I didn't feel like pulling out my Cricut, or I probably should have done that, but at any rate, I attempted little white stars. They're cute. They're whimsical, right? They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you get the idea. And then I went ahead and also painted a star in the middle of the little windmill. I was having a really hard time getting it to be even, so I kept going around and adding more paint to it to try to get it not to be lopsided. And it looked pretty good in the end. And so now I have from my stash this little America sign. I've had this for a couple of years at least, I think. And I'm just going to try to use that wire hanger that's on it to wrap it around the base of this to attach it here. I was having a really hard time with the wire. It did not want to flex. It didn't want to cooperate. It kept wanting to spring back to its original position. So I ended up anchoring it with some hot glue. I'm going to flip it over here in just a second and you'll see. So I got it wrapped around there as well as I could, and then just using a whole bunch of hot glue anywhere there was a meeting of the minds, so to speak. So now you can see that's a kind of an off-white white. I opted to go ahead and paint over it with my Adirondack white paint. The other option that I had would have been to get out my antique wax by Waverly, and I could have gone over my blades with that to dinge everything up a little bit to get it to match, but I don't know, there was something about the bright white that was really making me happy. So this was the way that I opted to do it. And that was it. Let me know what you think of this piece. DIY number two. Okay, so I've had this in my stash for a while as well. I believe it came from Hobby Lobby, and I most likely got it when it was 50% off because that tends to be the way that I roll. I think it was originally $3.99. It's a nice thick piece. I was trying to get all of the glue from the little hangers that were from the store off of it, but I have my ocean chalk paint again. Excuse me, and I'm going to be painting the home is with the ocean, as well as Your. So home is and your are going to be the blue. I'm just taking my time, especially around the edges where the wood meets up with other words. This is again sped up about 2.5 times just to kind of give you an idea. So when you see me going slow, I was going 2.5 times slower. And there was something, oh, and so now I'm coming in with my Adirondack white for wear, and I'll use that on the is as well in a little bit. But there was something about the way that these colors were working together on this piece. This whole surface is flat. So the wood is all the same height. It's like a solid piece that's been cut out. And for whatever reason, using the paints this way, it created this optical illusion where it looked a little bit more three-dimensional. Like the home is and the your looked like they were on a different plane from the where. I don't know how else to explain it, but it ended up looking really cool when I was done with it. Had a little something fall into my paint there, so I was fishing that out. And again, just taking my time, going really slow around the edges, making sure that I'm not getting my paints all mixed up. This is my crimson chalk paint, again, that I'm using here. I'm gonna just go ahead and finish filling in the heart, and then I will go back to my white chalk paint in just a moment and paint in the is. So this is a really quick, easy DIY. Obviously, it is not like super patriotic in that it doesn't say anything about Memorial Day or July 4th or anything like that. It doesn't really depict the USA, but it's the red, white, and blue, and so it's patriotic in that way, and it's something you can leave up all year round. So now I was trying to figure out how I was going to work with the hanger. Now it is able to stand up on its own, but I wouldn't consider this a shelf sitter because I feel like it's probably about a 1/2 inch thick. So while it stands up on its own, it would get knocked over pretty easily. So I had this sawtooth hanger that I was trying to use, but because of all the cutouts, it was a little bit large to hide anywhere. You were able to see it through. So I decided it wasn't what I wanted to use, and I grabbed out well, after thinking about it for a minute, I ended up grabbing out some of my little cord that I've used recently in projects. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of a loop here. So I cut off just, gosh, it wasn't even 2 inches. And then I ended up trimming that even more. And I had figured out where the balance was. I didn't subject you to that, but I had been holding it with my fingers from the top and seeing how it hung and figured out where the center really was from left to right as far as the weight distribution went so that it would hang straight, depending on where I put my loop, right? So I just added some hot glue there to the ends, and now I've got my little hanger here, and I think this turned out really cute. I'm just pulling the hot glue out of the little hole for the R, the R bump, making sure that it's nice and neat. And that is it, but let me know what you think of this one. DIY number 3. Okay, these are from Chalk Couture. So they are these fun little star cutouts, and they are shelf sitters. And then these transfers, they're like silk screening is the best way that I can describe it, because the stencil, it's not a stencil, they call them transfers, but the white space, it's actually mesh that's there if you've not worked with Chalk Couture before. But I'm going to go ahead and cut all these pieces apart, and once I have them all apart, I can decide what I want to use for which pieces. I'm only going to work with the star shapes for this particular project. I'll save the other pieces for another day. And I'm just deciding which ones I wanted to do. Now, I probably could have done them double-sided. I did not bother to do it this time double-sided. I just wanted to have the single side. So I'm just trying to decide which ones I want to use, because I have 2 of the medium-sized and 2 of the small-sized as far as options go. So I'm showing you my paste. That is Cadet, and then the other one is Candy Apple. The candy apple came in one of my little monthly packs, so it was just like a sample size. And then I have the full size jar of the cadet blue. So I am just going to fuzz my transfers here because they're a little bit too tacky when they are first being used. You can use these over and over again. I think I can't remember if it's 10 times or 20 times that they say that you can use them before they start to, I suppose, have issues. I don't know. I haven't used mine over and over again yet, so I can't really speak to it. But once I got it fuzzed so that I'll be able to peel it back up off of my surface, I went ahead and got it all nice and lined up. And then once I had all of the edges completely lined up, I just rubbed it down. Obviously, it took me a minute to get the hang of it for this first one. But once I had it lined up, I went ahead and rubbed it down. And then I was ready to go with my paste. And I wanted to work relatively quickly with this because I have had challenges where my paste has dried a little bit too much before I lifted up the transfer, and then the paint ended up coming up with the transfer and my design wasn't what I wanted it to be. Now, when I was working with this, I noticed that it was a little bit more liquid than some of the paste I've worked with in recent past. And so my paste, I might have just needed to add a little bit of distilled water to the pastes that I've been working with in the past. Here I'm starting to just peel it up just to be safe because I was nervous about not working fast enough. But at any rate, I think I just need to make sure that I am making sure that my paste is the right consistency before I start working with it. Here I'm all excited because it actually worked really well. My understanding is that it should be the consistency of yogurt, and I know that some of my paste has been drier than that. So operator error for sure. So now I'm just going to repeat the same process for my other two stars, and I'm going to get both of these ready before I do the cadet blue paste because I'm going to do them both the same color, and I figured it was more efficient to get them both prepared, and then I could do the paste on both of them at the same time. So I got them all set and the transfers applied, and now coming in with my cadet blue with my little squeegee thingy. Again, just trying to make sure that I'm working quickly. This was a brand new jar, so it was a really great consistency. I didn't have to worry about it being too thick, and so I felt comfortable just doing the whole star and then pulling the transfer back up. And look at how fun that is. It was a little bit, I was going to say sketchy. That's not the right word, but distressed looking on that USA part, but I was really okay with it. It looked really cool in my humble opinion. And then doing this one with all the little stars that are going to be knocked out. I like these transfers a lot. I think they're really cool the way that they're done, and they've got some really great designs. So peeling that up, how awesome is that? I love it. And then I could set them all up on the shelf together. Let me know what you think. DIY number 4. Okay, I have pool noodles, one that's left over from another project, and then another one. I am grabbing out my ruler. I'm trying to figure out how long this is. It was about 13 inches long. So I wanted to, originally I was thinking I wanted lengths of 4, 6, and 8 inches that I was thinking, or maybe 6, 8, and 10. I can't remember, but I ended up doing 5.5, 7.5, and then what I'm guessing was probably 9.5. Just based on the way that I cut these down. So I wanted to make sure that they were kind of like stair steps as far as length goes. I didn't bother with the ruler this time for the third piece. I just kind of eyeballed it to make sure that it had about the same amount of step. And so this is how they're going to look when they're all put together, but we're going to paint them first. Now, there are different ways you could do this. I opted for paint because I didn't have some of the other options available to me at the time. But this is my ocean blue, and I'm going to go ahead and paint this, the entire piece, top, bottom, sides, all, yeah, here I go throwing it all over the place. But went ahead and set that aside to dry, and now I'm going to come in with my crimson again. And this time I have a flat paintbrush, and I am going to paint stripes. Now, I totally could have taped this off. It probably would have been a lot easier had I done that. But I opted just to do it this way. And to be honest, if I had taped it off, I probably would have needed to Mod Podge along the edge of the tape because it probably would have bled underneath. This way, I could see exactly where the paint was going and I could adjust accordingly. I'm just taking my time. Again, this video is sped up about 2.5 times. So, when you see me going slow, I'm going about 2.5 times slower than what you're seeing. So went ahead and continued to work my way around until I had 4 of the red stripes on the pool noodle, and then I left the other 4 areas just white. I could have painted them white, but I didn't bother to do that this time. And then on the top, I just went ahead and finished off the little stripes up across the top so that my project looked a little bit complete at the top there. And then for the third one that I think I'm going to move to in a second, I'm going to be using the red again, and then I'll use a little bit of the blue, but I'm going to be painting first the first 2/3 of this will be red. And the hardest part for me was just making sure that my edge down where I was going to cut off the red was straight, because I kept wanting to go at an angle. So anyway, eventually I got it all pretty straight there. And then I took a more narrow or a narrower flat paintbrush again, and I'm doing thin blue stripes on the other third of this one. So I just continued to work my way around, but I was starting to wonder how on earth I was going to hold this because the red paint on there was still wet. I didn't want to have to stop and try and wait for it to dry. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Because those holes in the pool noodles are pretty large. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of off camera doing this, but I stuck a baby wipe in there with a tool that's used for clay. And yay, hey, you know what? Find a way or make a way. That's my motto. But it ended up being like a push pop, or a lollipop. I've got a nice handle on it now. So that worked out very well. And then I was able to just pull it back out again when I was done, just kind of carefully here. So that was all set. I let them dry overnight. And the next day I came back, the bottom of that was still a little damp. I guess because the pool noodle is plastic, there wasn't really any breathing room for it. And now I have the stencil that I alluded to earlier on a different project, and it is from the Dollar Tree. Clearly it is a flexible stencil, and I'm just going to kind of tape it off. I was trying to avoid getting the tape on the blue paint because I was afraid it might pull up the paint, and it ultimately did touch some of the paint, and it did pull it off, so I just ended up touching it up. It was really not a big deal. But I've got my Adirondack white chalk paint, using my little stencil brush and just dabbing with the paint. So I'm dabbing it off on my parchment paper first and then dabbing it all over. This definitely took a little bit of patience. I opted to use this instead of the sponges that I normally like to use because I was afraid that the sponges might deposit a little too much paint. And given that I was doing this with a stencil that was taped down but still relatively loose, I was nervous about it, bleeding that. But I think this worked out just fine. So got out my blue paint to touch up those other little spots. And then once that was all done and decently dry, I started to put these 3 together. So I've got these sparkler looking things. They actually are from Christmas time from the Hobby Lobby. I've had these in my stash for years. And I've used some of them in other projects. You might be able to tell that some of these have bent little stems on them or trimmed stems because I've actually used them in other projects that I've since taken apart. So they are definitely getting some use. But again, I needed to figure out how to make the stem wide enough for it to stand up inside my little firecrackers. So this is some scrap microfiber cloth from the Dollar Tree that I've used in other projects, and I just cut strips of it, wrapped it around the little stem, and then I'm tucking it down inside. Now I could certainly have painted it to camouflage it more, or I originally had thought about putting paper, like a little paper disc around the top of it to kind of seal it off, but ultimately I decided it was fine the way that it was, and I think they look really cute. So what I was saying before, and this is silver cord that I had also gotten from the Dollar Tree. I think this is Dollar Tree. I'm pretty sure this is Dollar Tree. I'm gonna wrap this around. I wanted to have it around there 3 times. I ended up struggling and doing it once and then adding a couple more. But what I was starting to say before, you could totally wrap these pool noodles with paper if you have festive paper that works well. That was what I originally was hoping, but I didn't have the kind of paper that I wanted for it. Or you could use fabric, wrap fabric around it. There are a lot of different things that you could do to create this kind of a little project. So it doesn't have to be paint. And honestly, paper or fabric would probably be a little easier than having to deal with the paint and less messy. So just something to think about. But I got the little cord wrapped around there and tying a bow, and my little firecracker stack is done. Let me know what you think. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thanks so much for being here. Take good care. Bye.